2025, the year of mass mobilization. For us, mass mobilization is about preparing for the insurrection.
Okay.
Yes, because that is our most standing position in the party, that it is only through an armed uprising that we can liberate our country. But up to this far, our history is unknown. You only know it from the basis of the Laminatinas, as if there was no Swazis before. I think that is the other dilemma, that is, Mswati's system is right-wing in thinking. It's a danger in thinking. Because if one says, outside me, no one must benefit from a country, that is actually a very stupid decision. Something that cannot be tolerated. It demonstrates a particular mentality. If it is said by some of his commanders in the army, then it actually tells you that we are now living the danger. As long as he has got an opinion to command, our planning must be systematic.
Yeah, welcome back to another episode of the People's Eye podcast. As usual, my name is Sizwe Samayende. I am your host. Today we're going back to the issue of Swaziland. As we all know, Amaswati have been waging a fight against King Mswati III's Tingundla system. It has been many years. Political parties are banned. Last time we spoke to Podemo. This was the first political organization from Swaziland that we spoke to. Today, we have finally caught up with the Communist Party of Swaziland. I'm with Mr. Kenneth Kunene here. We're going to talk a bit about this situation and get the views of his party on what they've been up to in order to fight the Tingundla system and sort of liberate the people of Swaziland, or bring democracy to the Kingdom of Eswatini. Mr. Kunene, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for hosting us here.
Thanks a lot. Just to start, tell us about the Communist Party of Swaziland. When were you founded? And what really prompted you guys to decide that, look, let us start a new party, a communist party?
It was established in 2011. Participants of that establishment, it was a project that started in 2007.
Okay.
The reason it was two conditions. One was there is a need for a socialist outlook to the solutions of the problem in Swaziland.
Okay.
Socialist outlook in the mean that when we understand the fundamental problems of our society, how they've been orchestrated, the only problem solution will be when the people of the country, in their majority, are in one another part and parcel of the ruling force. And that is the system that motivated us to say, without you in defining the power, there is no way that the interest can be fulfilled. Whenever we're expression of democracy, the elite, if it's a liberal democracy, the elite will always enjoy the benefit of that system. And then when we go for pervasive democracy, we are quite clear that those who participate in defining a state, planning how the economy is organized, will actually get to resolve the problems, the social problems that are faced with. So that was the situation. On another note, other reason was that we have seen in the main that the movement could not take any leap forward because of the organization and current conditions. Yeah. A communist party becomes one and first and foremost have the leverage of easy uniting because it is more built up on ideology.
Okay.
So in ideological orientation, we simply say, without anything, we're all teaching ourselves how we should look at, how we should think, how should we promote perspectives. So that's why we said for us to strengthen the movement, we need such kind of an organization that will easily get united and then try now to add value to the movement and expand to the mobilization strategies and the organization of the people.
Okay.
Because it is easier to move to a particular position other than other organizations that feel that they will debate over various issues. For us as a party, the Democratic Dispensation of Swaziland is a democratic republic. And we are saying so on the basis that there would be no way that you can have any system of a liberated society that has got limited rights. So we know that a republic will guarantee first and foremost the total freedom of the people. So in one or another, the Communist Party mobilizes along those tracks.
Being a republic means doing away with the monarch. What form or shape will the monarch be? The monarchy.
For us, the monarchy as an institution, I think it has got a very historical background. It used to be in the other, from the rest of history, has been how society has been organized around a cult of a certain family that is now has the right to produce leadership. And I think in one or another, it cannot be democratic. So exposing society to family rule, actually we are trying to create those conditions. But in the main, we are quite aware that the most important role of the monarchy now is actually to ensure that it can obstruct society from having access to land. And then if the people have got no access to land, who will have access to land are those who bargain over the monarchy. So that's why it will be capitalism interested in keeping that system. But the general people of Swaziland will always fail to actually uphold themselves to a particular family rule. I think that generally becomes a situation. So for our point of view, that is how it is. But as a family and any other organized society has a right to organize itself, but cannot subject the population to that kind of societal habits or that family habits and others. So for total freedom, actually it says that is most of the fundamental point. So for our own point of view, we know that historically they are traditional leaders. Traditional leaders, not necessarily saying it's monarch. Traditional leaders are people who, at various categories of society, have always systematically promoted certain values to society. And they must be actually acknowledged, because I think society has its own institution of development and expansion. So for us, it's not about fighting for a monarchy to say you want to preserve it. So every citizen must have that right. But such institution has got no value.
But give us a picture, let's say, for in an unlikely situation or a likely situation in 20 years' time, the Communist Party wins elections in Swaziland. It's a scenario you can only dream about. What will be the role of a traditional leader under a Communist Party government?
Every society has its own heritage or traditions. Like in our own society, the Dlamini dynasty are descendants of Zulus. But they found that the Swazis had their own aspects and attributes. And when they came in, they actually suppressed those kind of attributes because of the character of how they were thinking they must formulate the current arrangement. So they had to suppress them. And we are, in our own values, they will always actually articulate the values of our country. What is the history of our country? It doesn't actually start from the Dlamini dynasty. It starts before. You can see there are also paintings, Bushman paintings, that can express that there was something like that. But in the history of our country, you can't see that. But there are also those traces. But if there are those traces, they will actually appear to have been, there were people that existed before the Dlamini dynasty. So then they have to be suppressed. They have to be suppressed. And there are so many other people or certain clans that have always developed and attributed. There are so many historic sites that even now in the country are not recognized because of what they do not represent anything to the current Dlamini dynasty. So they have to be suppressed. So that is the critical value of why we then sort of say that the liberation of our people, defeating of the current monarchy, will actually create a new situation of defining the correct history of our country. So that is why traditional leadership will always have to say that, because they had those kind of values. For us, they exist as some form of a library, not necessarily to say they can exist on the basis of authority. They exist as a library to share that they knew how our country has been, how our society has been attributed, what were the practical attributes, even in relation to diet we all know that maize was not a stable food for Swazis. It used to be sorghum. But when you connect the values, you then attribute and check what was the value in sorghum that supported them to actually think that part of life. So there are a lot of things that not necessarily do not delay on power, but they must relate in the main about how our societal, social values and economic values have been formulated. And that is what we think is a leadership contribution than probably an authority and authority.
Yeah, but the main point you are driving is that if you win power, state power in Swaziland, then in terms of this issue of traditional leadership, you're going to go back to the basics and recognize
our history is important.
And
our history is important.
And even the current, but those that are legitimate.
Correct.
I mean, there was before.
True.
Obviously, before the Dlaminis took over, we hear of Masego.
Yes.
The Masegos, they were once high up there.
Yes.
As the kings.
They were,
of
partly they
Swaziland.
become one of the most other stable. I think that's a correct example that history has been, that history must be the curriculum, has to be in the content
It must
of
be
what
an
Swazis has, what Swazis must offer to the world. It is actually about those details. But up to this far, our history is unknown. You only know it from the basis of the Dlamini dynasty, as if there was no Swazis before. I think that is the other dilemma that is there. So actually the advance of the struggle, the victory of the struggle doesn't actually resolve the current problem, but it also supports the correction of history. So it is so necessary in that line. So that is how we then said, as we keep this as an obstruction of that history, you will always be contributing to actually misleading not only Swazi people, but the world. Because actually we should be the champions of what defines ourselves and make the world to actually understand what our country has been all about.
No, I do get your point. I do get your point. I wanted just to go back to this point. You decided that socialism will be the only way to liberate the people of Swaziland. And what I'm trying to find out is that the priorities here. Swaziland has got too many political parties right now. Okay, they've been springing up. There are new ones. Recently, there's Swalimo. There are many others. There's EFF, many others, and you are all divided. And you are coming with a socialist policy, which is very clear. But isn't it like putting the cart before the horse? Shouldn't you guys unite? Fight the system which you all detest, and then after that, then you go to your corners, or you all collectively decide the policies that will benefit all the Swazi people. I don't know. I'm not a politician,
it's a common, actually. That's one of the accurate exposure of the discussion about the socialism as an objective, and say in the whole course of the class struggle, if that's an ultimate end, or that's an end towards building up a common society, so whatever the class struggle turns around, even if others will say constitutional monarchy now, but I think if it is delivered, maybe probably through a decision, it will be about avoiding the correct power position of the people. And we're saying it's part and parcel of the struggle. When the enemy feels that it is losing everything, they start now to give concession. So all those will be concession. But what is the ultimate end? The ultimate end is when the people, the majority of the people, are in control of the state. And in that basis, it's our own class issues. Who are this majority? Is the people that are not part of the ruling class. And the truth is that without you part and parcel of the state, the state can never provide anything for you. Because it is that level. So that kind of a democracy that socialism brings, actually it supports the higher value of the current people to be now in part. That's why as a party we said we support a system of representative democracy and also direct power. That is why we talk about community structure and community power base. It is in that way that we say, and that build up of the phases of the new democracy we always say communities can on until we formulate the full-fledged socialist system. But in this current, we are saying the unity of this organization, if the CPS is united by the agenda of socialism as its ideological aim, not only to say it is the objective as an organization, but it also deals with organizational attitude, societal build-ups, and many other factors that it provides. It is not just simply to say it is just a blueprint power system, but it takes with processes. What we are undergoing as a party, once we build ourselves towards that, it is actually one thing that says, what is comradeship amongst ourselves? Corruption amongst ourselves, what does it mean? How to see yourself with others? So once we build that issues of comradeship amongst us and say, if that goal can be achieved in that way, so what is my interest over that? Because actually it will say, what is the value that the Communist Party adds into that new society, to the communities and to the people? We cannot rule the country on their behalf. We have to rule the country with them. And in what way? What system? It is not because the people will be thinking another way, the Communist Party another way. It will be just basically about interest. And then what is the underclass interests that are there? Then ourselves then will be propelling that. So if it unites us, then that kind of unity will also unite even the movement. Because I think most of the array of the forces, if you look at the political spectrum in the country, around 3 or so of the other organizations also speak about people's power. And our role now to say people's power in content, what does it mean? And then others say it's people's power because it's a popular campaign position. But sometimes may not be realistic. There will be elitist interest there. But in that way, it then says we can easily unite on those bases. Because when you start now to explain better the people's power, then say the issue of socialism has got an ideological element. Then it says, what exactly do we mean by that? I think in that angle, that's where we are. That's what the Communist Party felt now. It has got the guards that because we have proven ourselves very well ideologically, we are committed now to the ideology, we have actually embraced it very well. Then the Communist Party now can take a most important role and lead the National Democratic Revolution, lead these processes now. And in part and parcel of that is to find ways of actually working with any other organization that exists in the country that mobilizes. But we're having an array of many organizations. It's actually, for our own view, is that it supports, is the first angle of the defiance. That so many people can now stand up and say, yes, we are. Because political parties are banned in the country. The more we see them mushrooming, to us, they do not process a threat now, but they promote what? The mass defiance of our people. But in the main, we want, they must connect. There must be no political interest. But what can undermine unity? It is probably when others have developed elements that are actually completely out of traces of our influence of socialism, to say there's nothing for individual. There's no party individual interest. It must be about the collective. What do you play? What the role do you play as a part to the entire society? Not actually how to bargain for yourself in the system. By that kind, it just becomes very loose. And actually, sometimes it's like...
Exactly. But how do you avoid that with so many different political parties with different interests, of course, different ideologies? It seems to me we are all divided. And can one party win the struggle for democracy in Swaziland on behalf of everybody? Or do you feel that you guys really need to unite? At a certain point, you need to find each other, unite, fight together, and then you deal with the differences once you've ushered in democracy?
First, what motivates us is willpower. Actually, what is the willingness to say, can we serve to this mission under these hostile conditions? That one is our determination, it's our footprint. If you've got that under the circumstances we are in, we actually create a mentality that no one can be useless in our society, including infiltrating other members of the royal family, including penetrating, because our own view is that there is other traces within human beings in all categories that will always have the human heart. Even from the most gruesome aspect where the dictatorship can impose within specialized formations. But amongst them, you'll always see that you can tap that. Our purpose is that we have to go to that far. Whereas now we talk about organizations that have pronounced themselves, saying, and on their own, they cannot liberate the country. They have that kind of need. So all those issues are about increasing the level of consciousness, increasing the political abilities. But how do we drive them as a party? Because of our willpower. Promoting dedicated comrades will then say, we are working not on our interest, for the interest of the people. Then once you create that willpower, it will support action, activism. Then action will unite. So once people are actively involved, they are united, they will unite. Without the uprising in 2021, we'll have never experienced such unity of our people. So sometimes direct action is the one cause. That's why as a Communist Party said, our orientation about dismantling the entire nest of the oppression, if we are willing, if there is willpower to do so, actually the action will be the driving force. But it doesn't actually say we have to keep quiet outside that. We have to be shouting about unity, but in the main, explain what is unity and the purpose of unity.
Yeah.
So in that case, then you will then define that, because out of everything, as a Communist Party for socialism, but there will be elements of capitalist mentalities.
Yes. Yeah.
As a party, how do we work with these other organizations that exist, and what is our strength? Our party will fear nothing, because actually is our strength. Everything should be subjected to an argument, to a debate.
Yeah.
And we think that there is no element in our country that we cannot fail to explain.
But
from the social aspect, economic aspect, when they discuss issue of land, we believe therefore that democracy and those platforms of democracy will always make the opinion and the views of the party actually influential than anything. And in that cause, then it can actually undermine other elements of disunity, because mostly disunity is promoted by thinking of sectarian tendencies. Other people who say, I want to be different from others. Ourselves, we said, its strength is not just to be different. We're communists, we're looking for a future. And we say the future is socialism. And then in that future, that is the objective. It's not us. It's a job. We are now the messengers of the objective end. And then we said, we can be convinced by character, we can provide that objective end. And for us, we're debating, what is socialism? What does it entail to our society? And therefore, if we explain it as a party, that opinion actually will push up. But not necessarily ignoring that there will be other elements that will say, this is a condition of a threat, because that's an ideological position. You know the world, how the liberals would always say, avoid the common threat. And our own view was that avoiding the common threat must always propel quick action. And that is how we unite. Once, if the communists will gain leverage, they would always say, let us act before they can leverage. I think in that way, for us, that's not a threat. It actually accelerates the mission. And the other is the capacity of the party that says we can propel these forces to move faster, and then also play their own role. So that is the design. Because we know that there's an opinion that there's always to see, because they know it's coming. Once the communists gain leverage, gain strength, they know very well that, but they will create all those simulations that the whole country will be another thing or whatever. But if we explain very well what is socialism, and mainly when we've seen that survival and thriving socialist countries, what have they done? Where communists have been in leadership, what has it happened? What happened in the past where communists were leading? What mistakes did they committed? What are we correcting ourselves?
One may argue that the communist parties that we have currently, they are characterized by one-party state, authoritarianism, state control of everything, suppression of opposition and dissent, which is basically what we are fighting against in Swaziland.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this characterizes socialism, one-party state, or those things that I've mentioned now.
Actually, it doesn't promote one-party state. It promotes the underlying pattern is that democratic centralism. And that principle is clear. It says every issue, every decision must be thoroughly canvassed, and there must be robust debate. It must go to details. And in what details? If it is discussed within other elements that organize within political formation, it must be recognized. If it is debated within communities, it must be recognized. But it must be thorough, must be robust, must be to the detail. And therefore, if it's details, once the decision is taken, it must be executed. And then if then a decision is taken, and then by a majority, a popular decision is taken, and a minority seek to act against the decision, then what kind of a policy should be applied? Because actually it will undermine progress, because decision and the principle of democracy is that you must always advance in that way. So the elements of authoritarianism, it also comes up when others will then say the aspect of now saying a decision taken must be executed. Then those who have got that ability to action, those who have got that task of action, who have relations of action, the Communist Party is brought to power by the people through a democratic voice. And then it cannot then, when it has got that power, it has to use it against the people. But it must use it with the people. But the measure would be like that. But there were temptations with other communists to then say they can act over this power on behalf of the people without them. And actually that is where it doesn't change anything. It becomes authoritarian once it acts without the people. But our duty and our role as a party is to ensure that that's why our emphasis of our strategy is mass mobilization and grassroots mobilization, and ensure that there are existence of not only within political parties, because the people have never said authoritarian. It is only some political elites that will say they feel undermined. Because what is critical to societal democracy, to grassroots democracy, is the mentality of elites who then feel that the communists are now, like the other argument that is not made, communists are actually giving power to people that are not educated. They think people can run a country with people who have got no substance, who have no knowledge, no understanding. But the question is that, who are those people? In the main, it will say, are the peasants in our country who have been denied access to education. But do they don't have knowledge? Can they define their livelihood? Who has been raising the cattle? Who has been educating the children? In the main, the bulk of our population was educated by the peasants. What was their vision? Do you think their thoughts should be regarded as nothing? Why? Because now they state power? No. Is it? We should be recognized to that level. Yeah. So that is how the party feels that it would be there. But there has been elements where communist parties will then say they will fight oppositions. And fighting opposition in what way? Because our view is that what opposes the mission? The question is that there are always different views. So they cannot translate it to opposition. Yeah. But once we set up to build a system that would then say the others are in opposition, what is that? Our duty is that they've got thoughts and views about certain issues that may be different. But what are these views? Yeah. Then if these views are being overrun by another popular view, they're expected to comply. Yeah. Because they're minority. Actually, that is how we interpret the democratic process.
Which country are you looking up to that you think maybe is running the socialism very well? Without these negative things we've just mentioned now, suppression of the media and all of that. Which country would you say, if we take over, maybe we can model our governance on this particular country?
Maybe a practical illustration we have seen in the main Russia in the time of the revolution in 1917 is the most important example. Okay. What happened after that, I think, is a subject of debate. Yeah. But actually, that's what they've done, to take a country underdeveloped in the very same system and advance it to Russia to be what it is in that environment. Okay. And then we've seen up Cuba, irrespective of the embargo. Without the embargo, they will have advanced into something different. But you can find in that country, everyone has got the right. Everyone has got an expression. Others don't even need organization to express their dissatisfaction about the government, and the government supported them in that way. So I think those are the conditions. But what is the situation now because of the embargo? We are looking at China that is advanced in its own way under certain conditions that they've created for themselves. Before the opening up, everyone was seeing China as something that actually practices something that is not there. Yeah. But they've increased the population. They've increased the human capacity of the people. They've ended poverty after they moved up here. But under those conditions, one will say, how to measure a system to be successful? Yeah. If it can resolve social problems, that system should be deemed as successful. But how to solve that social system? It is not because you can practice imperialist tendencies, whereby you say, I will get the raw material from that country, even if it's through war. I will call them so that I can feed my own people. That is also incorrect. We must say what system was applied. The system that will apply that and resolve problem must actually be expressed within economic mobilization. How is the economy organized? How do people participate in economic activity? So if then people wake up in the morning to cultivate fields, to work in the factories, but they are characterized as the poorest, what does it mean? And there are people that are alienated completely from production and they remain vulnerable for anything, fed through donations like they are chicken, which just can give anything that you want. And when you look at that part, what is the system? What is the failure of that system? It is because it has denied, it's alienated the people from economic activity. Yeah. So we have seen that all those countries that have created a system of advancing the social situation of the people through organizing them, participating in democracy. Like we see China, day in, day out, they are changing things, trying to adapt and adjust to practical conditions. They've never actually installed a particular system and say this is how things will be done. They are saying through consistent engagement with the needs of the people, with nature and the development of the people. That's why they focus. The only people who can unlock under development is human capacity to connect with material things. Yeah. And then you create a system that will make it easier and actually more practical. Yeah. And that is why the purpose of the political system. And in our own points, we said those are successes. But under what world order? What disrupts those freedom of the people? That's why at the end of everything, the fight for socialism is a fight for the total freedom of the people. That is why sometimes, even in our country, are saying there is no conscious mobilization to liberate Swaziland if that mobilization lacks an anti-imperialist mentality to say what disrupt progress? Who benefits from Swaziland as it is?
Yeah.
It is not Dr. Mswati alone. It is imperialism.
Okay.
It is many of the multinational companies that are actually involved in any way of taking people out of their land who are running up these bigger conglomerates in the country. So all of them, how are they accountable? If they are not accountable, there is no democracy. And we are trying to say we want to create a system that will ensure, because if they are not doing what they are doing, you will find that the environment is destroyed. We find that displacement of the people alienates people further and impoverishes them. You'll find also the process of the country do not actually get distributed to support the general development of population. And therefore we said, what are the elements? That's why the system of socialism will say there must be maximum economic cooperation. In the main, you must say that must be the point of maximization. So that is the outlook to say, how do you make use of everything? We normally make an example to say the people in the countryside can raise a cow for almost 7 years. And then sell that cow at about, say, 10,000. And then selling that cow for 10,000 over the 7 years, someone buys that cow. And then within 2 weeks, he has made a profit of 20,000. And then we said, what is the fairness of that situation? Why the peasant who raised the cow are not valued over the processes of feeding the cow, of raising the cow? And then the one who buys the cow and sell it in short time makes a profit of no time within a period. So how to compensate that labor that has produced that cow, that intellect that was compensated there? And then we said, under what basis? And then in that case, we then say, there's no free ride over that kind of situation. There must be interference by the state to solve that problem. And then that is called also now the state imposing itself on all daily life of our people. But we're saying this is a condition. How can we define a fair price? Who can compensate the peasant under that condition? But if we don't solve that thing, the gap between the countryside and the urban will be wide. And then what is the wideness? Those who are in the urban will be more richer and more easier in life, and those who are in the countryside will be suppressed into condition. And in that case, what then becomes a countryside? Is it a habit of life that can be preserved, or is it an area where people stay and involved in production? If it is that way, let's see the rural communities developing. But they cannot develop if their production has no value or is undervalued. So in that case, there must be state interference. And then in what way? What if then the state is the one that practically supports their production, organizes how the cows are raised, and moreover now buy them from them? And making it very easy for them to actually translate their economic activity to some material thing. So those are issues that also fit and say state imposes itself, but it is about the state role. There should be a maximum role of the state. Also, what it's all about is about the state to resolve social problems. It is not about to parade a country or a territory. It is about fundamental things of resolve. So if that becomes a critical issue, why the state then should wield power and refuse to take care of the welfare of the people?
No, I get your point, but now that brings me to this point. For example, in the SADC region, what you're talking about has never happened. And you coming to South Africa, you see the relationship between the Communist Party and the ANC is very frosty. In any case, it's expected. I mean, the ideologies have always been different. Communism, socialism, and neoliberalism. I mean, really. So
Mozambique under Machel started, and then we will see the first phase of democracy in Zimbabwe. They've got those elements to just check about that. But only question about disruption. But in the main,
do you think you can achieve it in Swaziland if your neighbors have not achieved total socialism?
It's a goal that actually now not exists only within the region or in Swaziland. It is an objective that exists. It's a phenomenon of the world order that says how do the working class people of the USA, who are now imposed into high tariffs, into high inflations, into high... Then some of them do not have kind of food for houses. It says the working class of the USA is saying there's a better system that can do that thing. There's no any other between the Republicans and Democrats and the liberal Democrats that can solve them, because they can change each other, but instead the problems become worse and worse over that point. So I'm saying it exists anyway in that light. Even in the region, I think it should have been. But unfortunately, probably when I said the trends of mobilization, for us as the Communist Party of Swaziland, our view is that the trends of mobilization do not equate to the contradiction, to the crisis. There's a need for more vigorous, more committed mobilization that will actually express those things in the correct way. How to get the situation of, South Africa, it's more complaining in the main about migrants and illegal migrants. It says in the court cause, should it be an issue? To the point now, it undermines what should have been. It falls in the corner now, what should have been, what the AU advocates, border-free environment in the African continent.
Yeah.
But because of thinking in that line, you will then feel that, no, you must strengthen the border.
Yeah.
Actually contradicting with what socialism thinks, because actually the whole issue now is that the movement of the economy from one country to another, people, migration patterns follows economic patterns. They are guided by that. If there is a flow, or uneven flow, economic activities in a country, you will always see this paralysis. It is not necessary for people to migrate to that level, because a migrating labor actually spend more time out of production, spend more time actually out of social responsibility. You just say, I must work, get money, and then look at my social service later. But they should be integrated. And then that's why we said we must discuss a phenomenon of that nature, that the region is actually imposed by what? Neo-colonialism. That is why it says, as long as the regional economic outlook is being determined by British imperialism and bargaining it all over in that way, you will always face circumstances. That is why the mobilization should not actually say, we are trying to fix the South African problem. We are trying to fix the Zimbabwean and Swazi problem. We are trying to fix a world phenomenon. There's a world problem that says there's devastation, but the African and the regional continent, regional issues have their own unique elements that must be focused on. Who is who? Actually, what is the position of the movement? And then the patterns. They've been history. They've been influenced by history. And then in that cause, then we said, how do we resolve it? Because every square area, when we say, maybe we say, Mozambicans come and flew to South Africa as illegal. But you see, yes, legally, because people are going to, they are saying there's oil and gas is in Mozambique. They want that gas. Who has got the right to go for the gas? It is those who are rich. But the Mozambicans cannot make money activity on that gas. If then there's an interest of producing that gas, it will then say in that way, Mozambican economic capacity will be there. But how is Mozambique organizing itself to achieve that kind of goal? So also we are looking at those positions. That's how as a Communist Party said, it's not an isolated position of the party. It is supposed to have been. But because of our conditions, we might be the one that stand that ground. Because there is no way that we can mobilize better the liberation of Swaziland without what I've said motivated the party. It didn't come from the sky on theory. We came from our practical role that we've played in the struggle, and we said, these are the limitations. The only way out is something like that. And in the course of our decisions, we have seen also that we have changed what would have been people that have got no substance in our society to be people now that are influencing an opinion. As a Communist Party, we are also driving the opinion about what is the correct route for Swazi liberation. And all what we present is debated by others. So they are now offering opinion. We are trying to say the people in Malawi, the people in Zimbabwe, and people everywhere in the region also can do the same and then stand up a ground and say, let's interpret these dynamics and express our opinion on these dynamics to support mobilization. But if they are concrete, if they make a lot of sense, they will not fail to find a way to the people of mind in our societies. And then it can attract everyone. So that's why we said it is something that instead of us to be worried, our party must say, let's push forward and then try to actually promote and share our ideas in as broad as possible. So that it can influence other people.
I do get you, but it seems to me you've got a hell of a job on your shoulders to organize this movement. Let's say, for argument's sake, in the SADC region, to have a viable, strong socialist movement. You still have a lot of work to do, obviously. But let's go back to Swaziland again, because the main thing here is that you must get your democracy. But now, there's a Communist Party, there's Swalimo, there's Pudemo, there's EFF, there's others, many others. Don't you think by being divided like that, being many, that creates a fertile ground for the regime to infiltrate you guys? Some of you, you find some of you are working against the cause that you are fighting for. Have you experienced that, or have you suspected that there might be such infiltration?
That is a practical threat. Actually, the reason the movement can't gain a permanent offensive position is because of the capacity of the enemy and its auxiliary and also sometimes puppet forces to infiltrate the movement, to determine the route it must take. I think it comes sometimes not even secret. Sometimes it comes so open. Because where we find that limitation, it is when the ideas for progress are not owned in a democratic way from organized people. When they are being piloted and imposed, they promote arrogance. Others those who say, I was told by so that this is the correct route for liberation in Swaziland. Then even if you try to make sense and say, but this is the correct way, the arrogance will come because actually what comes up with. And we know that the cause of infiltration is actually also supported by the availability of resources and money. So there is mobilization now to counter the revolution that is supported by funding, not supported by resolution of the problem in the country. And that's why at the end, sometimes when that objective is met, other organizations simply disappear because the mission has been fulfilled, because the strength of mobilization was actually about the money available and the mission. When the mission is accomplished then by those who infiltrated, then we find that everything gets integrated. Others are not interested even in unbuilding themselves. They are interested about how do we connect with the people? How do I see myself parading our people? That is what we have also seen in the strike. We have made a very critical point, but some others are influenced by ignorance. But that's why we said as a party, as we stated clearly, for us as a party, the duty is quite huge, but not only huge on the basis of uniting. The whole cause of changing society is a huge cause. That's why it requires a certain momentum, a certain strength of people.
But now you're fighting for democracy, then you also got to fight infiltration.
That's the one purpose.
Because I think it's not easy to recognize the people who are working against you within yourselves.
Quite true.
Especially that you have so many parties.
The best way of us is to work with them and identify them and understand the tendencies. Because I think in our outlook as a party is that we have also developed ourselves the capabilities of noticing that the success of the mission. Because I think the most important thing that gives us better leverage is that when you look at what has undermined the socialist movement in history, then in that cause, all those issues that we are raising are part and parcel. Infiltration, not only about the organization, also infiltration of our own part. All the thing, because actually that is the nature of the class struggle. They will never allow a free flow. Not that the ideas are correct. They have to be allowed to pass. They have to be suppressed. They will kill those that are, they will our own main thought of the party is that we know what is the attitude of right-wingers to the communists. You then said, for you to be communist, you must risk being killed. Then if we are killed, everyone will say, rather find another way out. Because death is the cause. Death is not, the system is still powerful enough to actually to undermine your life as a method of fight. That's why I said, how do you organize the part to actually move up in that way? So that's the other pattern that has also made us to say, when we said, it is that willpower that drives us and say, if there's a willpower, the truth is that it must be the driving opinion. It doesn't actually say, I must be carried with an idea alone. It must then say, how systematic do we organize ourselves? And the worst part is that when we bring up this dispensation, because what is logical is that when the imperialists feel that they are losing everything, they simply say, let's give this breakthrough a premature condition to deny its fundamental values. And as a party, we are also securing ourselves against that condition. Because once they secure that position, what becomes the issue? What we see within the other formation is that their way of thinking will be, they will be given by auxiliary forces a false power, and they will define the Communist Party as a threat. And then when they give them, they will use the state machinery to actually eliminate the communists and do that thing. We are carefully safeguarding that. But learning from other struggles. That's how we are. That's how we play. That's how we understand the whole process as a party.
Now you guys seemed to be united in 2021 when this insurrection, everybody rose against the regime. You were all united, it seemed. At that time, I think we all participated in the uprisings. But now, the momentum, you lost momentum completely.
No, yes, but that is
all of you.
That's an important milestone in our history.
It is important.
In the eve of the uprising, a week before the first action, the majority of the Communist Party, of the parties, were denouncing that the people of Swaziland will rise against the monarch. A week before the uprising, a majority of them in the political party assemblies where I was at the end, we were the ones who were advancing and said that is not possible. It's a myth, it's a thought that actually is more occupied by the mentality of the enemy. Yes, because how do you explain people who have been involved in physical, brutal struggles, isolated, thinking that they can't rise? They must unite. And their unit of action can actually shift things. And then in the other cause, when it happened, the mobilization then came from other formations was that the youth will burn the country. Let's all join so that we can contain the youth. So there was not just a unity by that time at all. But what was united? The power base of the oppressed people were united and they were possessing a threat. And that threat was not only to the monarch, but it was also within liberal formations within the movement. That is why the outlook. You remember some other instances.
I was saying that in other words, the youth really saw a vacuum, a leadership vacuum of sorts, and then they decided to take matters into their own hands.
It was impossible for the youth because the most debate issue among the youth, which was mainly led by the student youth, was that each time when we build momentum in the collapse of the institution, because I think what was so obvious was that the institution of higher learning were in a collapse state. Everything was upside down. There was no funding and everything was like that. Lecturers were protesting. There was no money. There was nothing to run the system. And then the strength was that the momentum for the protests were undermined by the regime by closing the institutions. So in that period, our approach was that if they close the institution, the students should not go back home. They must camp. And in the course of the camp, the spark was when the killing of Nkomoy. Then that was the cause of action. And then from that part, the uprising element, the insurrectional element developed. But what happened? They just went to the police station. In the course of going to the police station, they saw a truck with sugar. They didn't do sugar. They just simply scratched and said, this is our economy. That's supposed to come up here. Where is our economy going? And that was based on consciousness. Because our work that we've done in the student movement had brought consciousness. And the people in the communities collected the sugar, then others bought things in the street quickly in Norway. And everyone was declared criminal by the system. And it mobilized those people. The people defended their condition of mobilization. And in their own way, they were trying to say, but they didn't actually understood the whole element of what was in the hearts of the people. It was no longer the sugar, because the student never took any sugar. They just simply contracted with their defiance, but they also moved up in the party and everything changed. When they thought that, no, the people can be contained through the chiefs by eating with land, so they found that the entire population was political. It changed up from the area where it was supposed to neutralize the people. When you look at the people who protesting in the rural community, they never thought rural people can struggle, can move. In the cause, then even our own cause was a battle to say this is a method of neutralizing. When you see the driveway, it neutralized because it was always speaking about peace, peace, peace. And we said, no, that cannot be there. What can stop us from changing any corner to be a revolutionary call? Then we said, including in that areas. And it was also through our own congress where we first started. It was, I think, Mafutseni police station, where we then said, no, we cannot allow. Then it was white collar police who just monitoring that part. We said, no, we cannot, even the whole thing was banned. And that was how things changed about, and everything that maneuvered and people organized through social media. It changed up everything that was supposed to be there. But the whole mentality of trying to contain was always there. That is why sometimes some protests were advanced to the front and prematurely. The people were not yet ready to move up. But the question is that if people move up to the street, what should they do? The question is that they must storm the palace. They should have taken over power. They can't just parade it in the struggles. But the worst part, we were even taken to the American embassy for protests to play around with the mind of the masses, to parade them in that way. But the people were already determined that their sweat and their effort must harm the enemy. Everything they were doing, it was about that. The corridor of the uprising, they were very accurate, banning all the areas that actually are the center of what Mswati benefits. The industries and all the things that were there. The people were then determined. The next move was supposed to storm the palace and grab the power. But they were then misled and they were taking about. I'm trying to illustrate the question of the ability of the unity, the environment that has been created, and actually now what needs to be done. We are not looking for a new uprising. We are looking for an insurrection to build from the environment that has been there. We do not doubt that there is a revolutionary people in our country. And by the main point now is that they must always be led properly, so that their effort and every time of their action must actually value to what they want. Our people want not to get someone who will give them better. They want to be in that power, so that they can never again be exposed into this condition, and they can address fundamentally this problem. So that unity it has to be carried out. But in the main, there's a part where we've seen increased debate among the pro-democracy forces as a method now to say the next move must have thoroughly supported, so that no one comes out thinking that this is a condition of power. You must see that it's a condition of struggle that must unleash to power. Because others were seeing that, no, this environment, I must bargain over the mass power and then say, I must be recognized. You might see in DRC how people are activity in DRC politics. Someone who can kill in a village must be recognized by the government to come up here to be in that government. So that was how you create your credentials. So even in our own cause, we've seen those elements that other people will say, how many people are supporting me? Then if I'm supporting me, I will bargain with the enemy. You say that is not the cause of our struggle.
This is what I was talking about. This is what I was talking about.
For changing the power relations.
But now, obviously, people of Swaziland are now conscious about what they need to do. Well, you and I and everybody cannot condone the destruction of the country in order to achieve democracy, obviously, because now the same problem you were referring to of immigrants coming into South Africa, it's going to exacerbate that problem. But is there a chance that the democracy of Swaziland can be achieved through peace?
No, a greater chance. Actually, for our own role as a party, that is the important thing. Because actually what must happen is that all the network that support the enemy to think actually it can exert power. Because the mentality is with the monarch to think now Mswati believes that if it is not about him, the whole country must pay. That is his mentality. And therefore we cannot act on his interest. The only interest is that if there's anything to pay, it must be himself. I think that is a condition. So in what way should that happen? You must actually paralyze the entire machinery that promotes that mentality. The entire machinery in his side. It must revolt. If it revolt within his family, revolt within the condition, within its auxiliary forces, it must happen. That is why the Communist Party now advances. We cannot plan this mission of saying we want a complete takeover of our country. And as we've stated, we want to inherit the government within from the public sector workers. We cannot inherit it within any other opponent. The correct people that will define how the new dispensation inherit the government, it is the public sector workers. And that is the whole point. And we say, if they mobilize very well, what will be their role? They will deny the machinery of repression to find a way. It is the public sectors who pay. Who pay the police, who push all these allocations. If then that environment is suppressed, the question is that even a highly mobilized army on standby, ready to fight any protest, if they will find that there are no logistics to support the mission, they will abandon the mission. So in that way, that is the peaceful way that the Communist Party cultivates the whole issue. But under what cause? Under the cause where the opponent, the opposition side that plans for maximum repression must also organize. And as we organize, they must organize and prepare themselves against us. But everything they are organizing must actually condition themselves to something out. You might have noticed that how expensive it is now to run the monarch. That those who go as a regiment, they have to be paid now. How are they going to be paid by who? It is part and parcel of promoting a peaceful condition. That commitment must not be abandoned. The regime must never play around with our people anymore. That is the consciousness. And if we don't do this mobilization very firmly, you will know which is that what is the cost? For if every time there's a gathering from Mswati, he must put they must bargain more. If you go to Ngwaleni, we had 2 days as a worker. So what kind of a worker who works without producing? The worker I was all those things, he has given them turkeys and everything. The question is now, he must pay the army, he must pay the police who are unpaid. If he pay the regiments, he must pay everyone. So once they do up that, where are they going to get the revenue? Those who are prompting out the enemy will also be in conflict. to say, how do we work up these businesses just to find you and trying to buy people in that way? Our people must be expensive to the dictatorship. And their expenses to the dictatorship is actually outlooking their consciousness. No one must run the country thinking our people are cheap. So that is the mentality. So it is part and parcel of the wholesale of mobilization that culminates into something said, we are mobilizing militarily as a party, but we are aware that we want to run an insurrection, a peaceful insurrection. We want to make sure that we have a bloodless takeover. And that is our systematic outlook. So that is exactly how we prompt it. That's why as a plan, as organized, defending ourselves, promoting the strength of a movement, we are also having a very sealed peace plan.
Yeah, but
that is our important condition.
But does the pro-democracy struggle have supporters from within the royal family?
Definitely. Actually, our struggle, the momentum of our struggling will be basically based on how are those who are expected to decide against the people.
Yeah.
A decision against our people that will mean crime, because most of the crimes are now promoted by the regime more than anyone. So many people have seen equally in the police and military that you can be instigated to be to defend the system in using criminal ways, but also you become threat to the system. They promote you to kill, but they also want to kill you so that they remain clean. So I think that is a critical condition. And in the whole cause, it was also explained that what will be the future of the real family? Who are involved in making those decisions? Because now it's a new crime that says you want to promote people in a system using a police to kill, but also kill those who are killing. And then in that kind of a lifestyle, then he said, what kind of crime will that be? If then the members of the royal family who are participating in that kind of criminality, they must also then say, they must rather accept that the system has failed. If it now turns up to be in that way. Because now it endangers even their future. Because we can't fight and defend something that has got no future. If their future is prison and the gruesome condition that they are creating tells them that they are nothing, there will be humiliation. Actually, they must decide otherwise. So I'm trying to say it is not actually about making a plea to them, but it's about how to create the condition that they must feel that this system no longer serves their future interest and their children's interest among the royal family, among the army, among the police, among the entire institution that galvanizes this repression. They must all have that kind of decision. But that's why when you said only that kind of willpower, that mobilization, that passion, that discipline that the CPS now inculcates it in the movement. Our leadership role now wants to promote that kind of thing. It's like, let's build and preserve. Let's build and resist. When we resist, we'll invite them. They will come up. No land must be taken anymore from our people. And they must allow now that there are no taxes that are imposed to our people. They must start now to develop themselves and govern themselves and deny the enemy any access to their livelihood. And therefore, we're saying the youth must always say they must be in school because they notice what is happening in the country. That it is the peasant and the people, the workers who are surviving the regime through the education, through the school fees system that makes them to pay, promoting banks. Because families are struggling to pay school fees, but they are exposed also to pay the top-up fees. To say the bank transaction is not dependent on the school fees. It must be your own money to put in the bank to sustain that money there. So the bank benefits, the system benefits. There's no education. There are no schools built, but the people are doing everything to pay the school. That is impoverishment of the people through education. So the young generation must recognize that, no, we are in the cycle of poverty because we don't even complete a year. The education is too expensive and the costs are too high. If you pay first deposit, second deposit, but by the end of the year, you must be out of school. And the system promotes that to say tomorrow, next year, you must come again and start again from the same condition. And in that course of life, the youth must then also think up and say, literally, we are being meant to jump up and down by the system. It has made it to our parents, now not this generation. That's why we are saying those who are highly determined to make this freedom come with all conditions is a youth that has got no future. That is their future, is that immediately when we are free, they must start to go and organize their life in schools. And then the other one will say, no, we want a system there. If you are older, you will think it later. But the generation says we are the ones who want to end this system so that a new system can be created. And we must be in school. We won't be getting any fruits that we'll gain from this new order is for us to be in proper school, in proper education. So I think that is the kind of determination that we fail with as a party, that this can still make the momentum, the lessons can be the environment still demand us. What is missing now is actually how far are we to actually establish the network of mobilization. And then in that course of life, how ready are we as a Communist Party to ensure that we lead and guide this struggling very correctly and accurately. and make our people to be heroes, that the people who have been historically oppressed have liberated themselves, not the Communist Party, have liberated themselves.
Yeah.
And in that way, the party will actually have gained the most necessary prestige from our people.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about the two MPLs who are in jail, who were also part of the reason why there was an uprising, and they protested within parliament, of course. Now they are languishing in jail. What's up with them? As pro-democracy organizations, how about them? Are you thinking about them, or they waging their own struggle on their own there? Where do they fit in the broader picture?
Like if the royal family members can also lift a finger against the system, how much more from people who are actually trying to take chance over the system by saying, okay, if it opens a window for you to be rich, I can mobilize people. But at the end, the conscience comes from the people that we represent something. But what was critical by that time was that it was clear that the system was under siege.
Yeah.
And it was not, only those who cannot think bad, who will have not objected and reasoned against the system. It was a platform that exposed the whole environment. So why are they incarcerated now and actually placed into this kind of thumb charges? It is because Mswati and his system still believe that the world is being hooked by the parliament, the puppet system. So they are punishing them because they were spoiling the environment that they think is their lever to define the opinion. The older system is an autocratic system.
Yeah, but
it's undemocratic.
Yeah,
but as long as they can run a parliamentary system, they are able to bluff the world and think that there is democracy. Yeah. So those people who were playing in the field that they think was not them. Mswati's anger is incarcerated in them. It is not actually any other thing, it's the anger. The reason it is on that line, because who do they belong? They were the ones who do not belong from the appointees of Mswati. They are the ones who have got an element of influencing. But if you look at the whole issues, their area of operation is the area where the European Union have got interest. They want to take over Spofanen for the interest of the European Union. The area, Simankayane, is also targeted for that. It offers what better in the site in Chisele. Those are areas of future production by the European Union countries. Okay. So actually what they were doing there, they were actually now sensitizing a population where these people believe that this population must easily surrender the rent. So once they conscientize those people, they will always think that Mswati is punishing them for that part. Like it will punish any activist. So they punish like political activists in that manner. That is actually how the environment is. Because of what their opinion to the constituency was actually trying to say, Mswati felt that I'm being undermined from within my ranks, and that's why he can impose that kind of anger. They're an example of the history of how the system can be brutal. Yeah,
but where do they fit in the struggle? These incarcerated MPLs, are they on their own? Are they part of?
When they were in their action, they were on their own, but they were responding to the cry of the people.
Yes,
that is what they are. They will have integrated because I'm going to say when they come out, we may not know what they will say. They will go and apologize to the king for them, or they might be maneuvering that part. So I cannot insulate to them something that doesn't belong. They were inside the system with their own personal interest. And then when they saw that there was any cry, their consciousness alerted them to the cry of the people. And they will see that there's a popular struggle of the people, and they were correct to join that struggle. Yeah. And then in that cause now they are punished. If only they knew they were supposed to have actually escaped, because that is what it is. And that's why we're saying in the course of struggle, you must also know who is in more danger and how should we protect each other in the cause. Because now what they've done, we've created an example to the regime. But otherwise, what would have been the cool cause? The world forces to respond to those conditions should have actually acted brutal against the incarceration. But if they had mobilized very strongly in the if they had belonged to the environment, actually it would have meant that what decision Mswati takes must have changed up and other things. You might have seen Amos Mbez was a South African solidarity, because the solidarity movement was also not ready to offer him. He languished and they killed him to that level. As an example, that give a hand to the Swazi people, he will serve. Yeah. Then the question is now, the Swazi struggle must be owned by the people, and they must be resilient enough. They must understand it very fully so that they act on those bases. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of casualties. as we might have. And that's why, as a party, we're trying to do. We have got our members also incarcerated. Yes, they will always try to play down their cases to say we do not know exactly what they are. But also, as a party, we're trying to say, as we build up the momentum, if the enemy touches our own comrade, what should we think about it? Should it not be a spark? Like it did to Nkomonya when he was arrested there. So that is actually the purpose of life. But otherwise, you find that in the course of mobilization, there would be always the space of neutralizing because of what probably they didn't have initially a strong political identity. They could not actually galvanize a position. You create the element of doubt in however they might think. So that's why actually there will be no, but people are actually feeling it unnecessary. The incarceration is actually known as unnecessary. But you know exactly, Thulan Masego was killed. But the issue of selection and determining who should be punished how is the duty of the enemy. Is how is this designed? If they choose to make you rot in jail, choose to kill you, and whatsoever, that is their choice. So up to this far. But we want to say we must survive because of our own decisions, not because of the choice of the other side. So that is how we think we can respond to this kind of time.
I do get you. But now, the SADC, do you think they've been fair to Swaziland? I mean, after the uprisings, there were a whole lot of meetings. There was a proposal of a dialogue which didn't take place, really. I don't know, in your own opinion, do you think SADC could or should be playing a very active role and take a side in the Swazi issue?
Because of neocolonialism, SADC has got no political opinion. Because by nature, it will have been defining the regional political and economic interests, aims. But it is actually surviving neo-colonial interests. So if then it exists without a political opinion, it will actually fail to make any correct political opinion, even in our own country, from whatever is happening. So I think that is the most natural part of it. That is most problematic area. That's why in the main issue, how to influence SADC? It should be influenced in the same way by the mobilization of the people. The movement in the region must have its character to be anti-imperialist, as much as it look about the problems that affects our people. But it must also know that it must have a political opinion of promoting, even though national sovereignty is temporal, but it is so fundamental under present-day imperialism to say, literally, let's see these countries taking full responsibility of their affairs, of their territories. Not to say they must subject that to imperialism. They must not go out to present a project proposal for imperialism to finance. They are already promoting the laws of sovereignty by doing so. And if they do so, they will never have an opinion about any other developments in the region. They will have no opinion about the dynasty, Mswati dynasty, that undermines people into that fashion. When SADC promotes about growth, they look also many things. About education, they look about population, healthier population, but in our own country, they will also don't count Swaziland, will not make an impact in all the strides that we are making as a region. And why to close your eye when you are determined about the objectives? They will always have something very proper and say it is because they say incorrect political system. That has got no opinion, that's got no determination similar to that one. But what happens is that they simply say, what are the policies that Swaziland has? Do they contradict? But what happens is Mswati spies within South Africa, within the region, that simply take the same proposal. When South Africa goes to whether the State of the Nation address, the foreign Mswati will take the same, his spies will take the same thing and draft it and put it in Swaziland, becomes a policy of Swaziland. And then in the course, then South Africa will say, it's a friendly force. Because of what, policy-wise, it has got no conflict. It shares with things. So it is in that way that they've chosen, not because they're blind, they've chosen to say we must keep this dynasty in this way. So that is the alien. But who, for what purpose? For the imperialist interest, for neo-colonial interest. So that is the one purpose. Because of what? Swaziland's role in this environment is like the most sacred side for the British royal family. Because this one is our baby, it's our thing, it's our cultivation, it's our creation. That is, it must keep it protected. I may not be sure if other leaders in the region, when they go to there, they will ask, how is our king? How is my king? How is Mswati there? SADC might be accounting about the state and welfare of Mswati than actually his people when they account to the imperialist. You might not be surprised if those might be part of happening. So that is how horrible the environment is. Whenever you can see many people in South Africa everywhere rising in support of showing their own, I'm saying, dissatisfaction about the system, and sometimes anger about that system. Say how to keep it, but it cannot, as long as the system is actually decorated by imperialism. So that is why you cannot see any opinion from SADC to that effect. So that is the most other painful part of it. But it's our burden, it's our responsibility.
In essence, you are on your own.
So there's a whole issue. That's why we also say we must increase our networking and support and engagement with our community to say it's not only our issue alone in Swaziland, but let's look at it. When we debated the issue of Mozambique, we have seen also that as a country, as CPS, when we debated, we show a lot of attraction for other forms to say, how to debate the development in Mozambique.
Yeah.
So to others, it was so simple to say, what. But when you go to the details, the background, and looking at the things, what could be the outlook? How best can Mozambique be actually, can we have responded? Mozambique has been subjected to isolation because of what Mashela was trying to build, socialism. And in that cause, the whole apartheid mobilized against him. And that isolation has not changed. Mozambique is still isolated. The problem for Mozambique is still now the huge debt that actually has been imposed to Mozambique. That makes all the wealth of Mozambique now to be actually the condition of paying the debt other than probably.
So in other words, as Africans were being played by...
And instead, you must then try up to create up those kind of conditions. He said, if us, the people who don't organize very well, will actually be subjected to the minimum thinking of the elites. That may actually fail to be comprehensive in thinking about what really defines us.
So each country is a puppet of some European country, each country in Africa.
That's the crisis.
In SADC.
And we enjoy that puppet responsibilities. And sometimes you parade as if there is something else when there is nothing. So that's why there is that need of the detailed understanding and analysis of certain things to that line.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think of Jacob Zuma's sentiments when he was in Swaziland? I'm not sure he was speaking as the father-in-law or as a South African politician, but he expressed his support and staunch support for a monarchy system.
I think from our historical understanding, the issue about Swaziland and the ANC then, to say if they could infiltrate and have Sopuza playing double standards, sometimes harboring ANC, sometimes selling them out, and then in the cause risking Mozambique, and people like Zuma were part and parcel of those that were using Swaziland for that. It suits them for the ANC to carry the operation. The arrangement status quo suits them.
Yeah.
And up to this far, nothing have changed. And how it suits them in the current situation, it is probably because of what it is also a safe haven for illicit activities. We might not have the cornerstone of everything, but there's no purpose for anyone. I think you might have learned when there was an uprising, things will happen. His opinion about Mswati was that when people cry, they must be listening. When things are tougher, he will always respond. So there's always that kind of treating Swaziland as long as it suits them. I think that is the most uncomfortable position. That when you become unprincipled to the situation in Swaziland, to expand it and say, ruling by kings is the correct way.
Yeah. And
in the cause, you form a communist political party, you don't form kingdoms. You then say, praise other kingdoms. That actually suppresses.
Yeah.
They suppress what defines you. What you're fighting for, what you characterize yourself day in and day out. You are trying to say others in the other angle must not be worried like we are worried. So one of the elements to say, no, we are too clever than the Swazis.
Yeah.
And that is the element of actually how we feel undermined. When someone says, you come to Swaziland and say the king is correct, but when in your own cause, we are fighting for another political system. And then the question is that what you bring, what you actually to present. The question is that there is always a decision, a very uncomfortable position when others will then say, Swazis are not clever enough. They must be given anything. And whatever they are given, they must praise it. But then we are trying to say, do we ignore it or not? But actually it says, let us read correctly to say, what will be the role of South Africa in the entire course of our struggle? When actually more elements within South Africa that are actually prompting up and moving up. Still create that condition and then promote that thing.
My question is, the ANC has been in power for nearly 30 years now. They have been welcoming you, democracy advocates of Swaziland in South Africa, but they are doing nothing significant about trying to resolve the problem in Swaziland.
But on contrary, you will say they listen to us, they serve, they act, they cooperate with the system. That is the most important, because the bilateral relations with Swaziland and the commitment they make actually supersedes what could be. It might be in one or another trying to remove a shock from the regime, and that is how we feel that it is like massaging us, because I think what is the position, what should be the critical part? And quite important is that when Swaziland go into difficult situation, the influence of SACU subvention to Swaziland doesn't follow the SACU formula. It has to be topped up. And the most of the economic activity that tops up is actually created by South Africa, and the lobbying force is South Africa. Financing the dictatorship, it probably becomes a decision. When Mswati gets bankrupt, he will come to South Africa to ask for money. He gets money. So from the very same environment that you sympathize with their people who are brutalized, but the brutalizer and the oppressor, when it comes and say, I'm short of money to continue with my brutality, you fight that. So actually that becomes also the most nasty situation in state of affairs. But they demonstrate that kind of a situation to a point that unless we build that strong anti-imperialist movement, there will always be betrayal. We still believe that Mozambique was betrayed. The isolation of Mozambique was a part of betrayal. So Mozambique should have not been
so South Africa is standing on both sides of the fence, straightening the fence.
That is the point. That is the weakness. I think that is how probably even the NC and other organizations are discussing that actually they must be moving out of this condition. But I think from what we see, from what we read, it what they present. But now it would be like, how best can the mobilization start now, and when will it start? So that at least there is an active movement that actually creates a condition that addresses South African problem, but also carries up the anti-imperialist mode. In that way, even our struggle can be fully accommodated within the region. Otherwise, as it stands now, we also fight again in the environment of isolation. But I think when we make effort forward, we can see that our activism, our direct action effort towards solving the problem undermines our more than our lobby. So when we do much on the ground, where we try to change the balance of forces to another way. We shape the opinion better when we're in action than when we are in the boardrooms. Yes, because then we don't actually invite. We don't send proposals. We don't actually set appointments. We simply act, and our action invites everyone to respond to the action. And that's why we
the last question. Do you think we are close to achieving what you're looking for, or you are still far? It's still going to take decades.
Political mobilization, there may be very specific aspects that defines closeness, but also it is the art of doing things. The question of leadership is critical, because those who want to advance, our country can change in the next 2 years, but it will be based about the formidability of leadership, accuracy in how they are doing things. Because actually what we now know, the mass position is on the side of change. And that is the most difficult part. If we have won over the masses, then we've won the better part of it. Now what is most important now is that how then do you apply the art of leadership to make sure that you make this reality happen, and then organize formidably. That's why as a Communist Party, we are involving and engaging now both on diplomatic and also mobilization as part of how then to support this mission to the end. Then that is the most important part. So that when we press and people said, what mission? The mission actually must surface itself. It must be where we act accurately. We must have denied. Even those who are benefiting from the country, they must say we are no longer benefiting. They say, what is the new course? So in that case, then when we see those things happen, I think there will be no doubt. But even then, if there's no strong leadership, it can turn to a civil war. The gains can be reversed. So, but I'm trying to say, illustrate the both aspects that there's work that must be done to push things to the correct way. And that same capability that is required must also be strong enough to make sure that it fulfills the aim of the objective. The people can't fight just for the sake of registering their anger. They must fight to gain what they want. They must fight to change their country and gain power and develop a new system. So if that could be the design, that it can happen. So if the people are ready, then things can happen anytime. But as I illustrated, there is a need for actually formidability. The only thing that must be looked very strong is that how organized are we? How determined is the leadership? How actually vigilant is our method, and how do we apply our tactics in the most formidable way in the environment? In that course of life, we can change even everything, even those that were simply so much. They were seeking now to create a deal with Mswati and turn their deal and change up and say, we are now supporting the oppressed people. So I think that is the surprises that we can do, we can perform in the cause. But we must be astute in many ways for us to reach that.
So now I'm going to ask, what's your program, your next program, maybe for a year, 5 years, 3 years, I don't know, but what is your program to advance the fight?
2025, the year of mass mobilization. For us, mass mobilization is about preparing for the insurrection. Yes, because that is our most standing position in the party, that it is only through an armed uprising that we can liberate our country. So that's why we are saying it's mobilization. And in all corners, that is why I said even diplomatically, even the finer elements of our population should also play and understand their purpose.
If you say armed, then basically it means you should be having people trained. Like the ANC, for instance, they formed Umkhonto weSizwe because
for genuine peace to exist in our country, we should have a strong organized army for the liberation. For us to reach to peace, politically organized and also technically advanced. That is the more important. Otherwise, we'll be going up to say we are going for a war. We are going for a liberation. We are going for an insurrection, a liberationary program to liberate our country, not to go for war. So that is our purpose. We need that kind. That's the practical aspect of our attitude. It is that kind of a dimension that as a party we are. And as we have seen that the whole issue of the uprising was about the armed action of the people. When they started to use whatever they were, just to hide the enemy, just to apply their an interest that they can build a new country. That's what, and in our own cause we said we need to actually apply it with the very proper practical and technical kind to say it must minimize loss of life, because the only danger of any war is when there's a lot of life. Okay, it's not wrong to organize a war against a war offensive, but what is wrong is that when you organize, it actually ends up to cost people's life. Our duty is to organize that army that will have that capacity to infiltrate the enemy of the other side, neutralize it, make it unable even to stand any forward mission. That's the attitude of our people, and make the courage of our people to say they can express their views, their voices in a true sense, knowing very well that they are capable and they are determined. And in that case, we said it must expand, it must have feeling within our people. Because actually at the end of everything, things are like that. We've noticed some of the tendencies that Mswati will do to say they will think that any population that doesn't support his side has got a cruel attitude within it. So we're also guiding other elements to say they want to destroy other population as a method of trying to find, because Mswati's system is right-wing in thinking. It's a danger in thinking. Because if one says, outside me, no one must benefit from a country, that is actually a very stupid decision. Something that cannot be tolerated. It demonstrates a particular mentality. If it is said by some of his commanders in the army, then it actually tells you that we are now living the danger. As long as he has got an opinion to command, our planning must be systematic. That he must not create that condition. He must not succeed in doing so. And now when he feels that he's losing, to invite mercenaries, we will see that we are dealing up with a very certain character that actually requires our reinforcement.
Okay. No, you've said a mouthful, Kenneth. Thanks a lot for your time. We really, we've seen that people of Swaziland have got an appetite about their issues. That's why we decided to bring you here. We're still going to try and bring the other political parties again, just to express themselves here. But thanks a lot for coming through. I know it's been a struggle to find each other.
But finally we had to.
But finally we did.
No, thank you very much.
From us, we're closing it. But don't forget to subscribe, to like us. If ever you want to read, go to peopleseye.co.za. The website will be showing on the screen. But if you want to contact us on issues of advertisement, you want to promote your business or something like that, also contact us. Our email addresses and telephone numbers will be showing on the screen. Thanks a lot. Until next time.